Hello, how's it going? Gennaro here, CEO of Cortex Solutions, your lead instructor, and today we're going to be talking about advanced firewall configurations. We're going to build on top of the basic fundamentals that we talked about previously. Brought to you by ACSMI. Let's get started. Now, firewalls, as we talked about, these are going to be at the core of cyber, along with our trifecta, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But what a firewall does is going to act as like a gatekeeper. It's going to regulate the traffic that's coming in and that's going out with, firewall rules, ACLs, right? Even the basic configurations that you put into place, it may be good for like a simple environment, but as you grow in complexity, and we'll be talking about more complex ways of integrating and implementation of these different firewalls as well too later on, it's going to be essential for businesses handling these complex environments that are high risk. So the configurations are going to be not only just more of a granular control, but more so robust security mechanisms that can be, adaptable, that can be repeatable as time goes on. Now, let's talk about some of the key points. So we know what firewall types are. We have packet inspection, packet filtering. You also have your next gen and web application firewall. So I won't get too much into these. Just know there are different types, and depending upon the capability, that's what you want to go for. Depending upon the business need, that's what you want to really go for. The placement of the firewall, and we're kind of getting into some more of the advanced type of topic here. So advanced networks, right? They're going to have multiple firewalls, like throughout an entire organization, right, from the network standpoint. So perimeter firewalls, as we can see here on our graph. Think about perimeter firewalls going to protect the actual asset from external threats. It's like the first line of defense, going from in, out. Then you have the DMZ firewalls. Now, this is going to shield these public services. You see a lot of times web servers are just kind of sitting in DMZs. Right? It's going to create that buffer zone between the external and the internal, but you're still able to shield these accessible services because they are public or client facing. And then you have, just kind of going on the other outside ring, your internal segmentation firewalls. Now, this will divide the internal network zones. We talked about security zones before, so it's going to limit the damage from insider threats or lateral movement after a breach has occurred. Right? Think about after the fact. All right, now let's talk more about the cloud as well. Right? So cloud-based firewalls, these are more firewalls that can assist, we talked about before, multi-cloud tenant as well too, or infrastructures if you're using it that way. And it's all about, safeguarding the virtual assets. We'll hear certain things around like VPCs as well, virtual private clouds. This also assists with that as well. But overall, while attaining that low latency, I think that is what's really going to help ideally if you're looking to provide more so from a cloud standpoint. Now, configuring the actual access control policies. Now, you can even have local security policies and domain level policies, but just speaking strictly to the firewall portion of it. Now, advanced policies, of course, that least privilege is going to always be there, right? We always want to make sure least privilege is there. But then you want to also think about, what is your whitelist? Okay. Well, what type of access rules are dynamic? What are zone-based? So let's kind of break it down a little bit. Now, the dynamic access rules. Now, this allows us to adjust permissions, right, on different aspects, like user behaviors, like their patterns. Your zone is more like we talked about your security zones. So this is going to compartmentalize the network into segments. It's going to assign strict rules to these zones. That's good. You want to have that. Because, one zone may need a lot more of, let's say, harder controls or a harder way to break into the networks depending upon the information that's being passed within that network. And then you have time-based rules to those. So this is going to enable like restricting of certain hours, right? If you want to limit the time to have one of your employees on and they can't just wake up out of the blue at like midnight and hop on and do some work, you want to be able to eliminate that aspect of it. Some of the advanced features that we've already talked about this as well when we were kind of going through like what firewalls were. You have deep packet inspection. This is going to be the ability to examine these payloads. I mentioned that using MSF minimum or using a Metasploit, you can kind of craft and create these different payloads I highly recommend in an isolated environment, of course, on machines that you have permission to do so, using those different tools like we talked about, like Wireshark, and using things for threat intelligence feeds. All this really plays a big hand into how we're modernizing our firewalls. And you even have unified threat modules too. But overall, speaking about mainly what a firewall is all about is just protection of inside and outside, right? Making sure that there's a barrier there. Now, the configuration of high availability. So we've talked about what critical infrastructure is. We didn't really speak too much on single points of failures, though, because they exist. You have one sole system that holds all the keys, that does all the things, and no backup and no redundancy. That's a single point of failure. So you have active clustering, where multiple firewalls share traffic loads to maximize that performance. So it's not all on one. It's like its own load balancer. Okay? And then you have active standby, as far as like a configuration, right, for high availability. This allows for failover. So let's say something happens, we have downtime on one of the routers or one of the firewalls. Well, you have the ability to, pick one up when something is down, right? And then synchronizing the different files as well too. This is going to help overall the referencing of all that data when it comes to just the firewalls kind of talking back and forth. The aspect of logging and monitoring, you can't necessarily just protect a network just by logging. You have to also monitor it too for, anomalies. So you have anomaly detection in your configuration aspect of these firewalls as well too, and being able to forward logs. That's ideal, right? So they're sent to something like a SIEM, something that's centralized. We always talk about the network points. We always talk about what the SIEM, you're gathering information from all your network sources. Well, a firewall is a portion of that. Real world example. Let's think about, protecting a hybrid environment. So what you want to do is you want to configure your firewalls on-prem and in the cloud. Remember we talked about those firewalls in that graph, how you kind of went out. We finally got to the cloud type of firewalls or next gen. But you can use the next gen features in a lot of these firewalls to do traffic segmentation, to do ID-based or identity-based. Right? Because we're trying to control the access in multiple different environments, something that's hybrid. So just be aware that, when you're really, really digging down into firewalls and understanding the aspect of it, it'd be good to just notate that, there are other aspects to a firewall. I can do deep packet inspection. I can do all these other different advanced things to get myself an understanding, a real deep understanding of how this firewall works. And there's also documentation and knowledge hubs, depending upon what vendor you went with for a firewall anyway. Again, it's been great. Gennaro Washington here, CEO of Core Tech Solutions, your lead instructor, and we just talked about advanced firewall configurations, brought to you by ACSMI. Take care.